Hello everyone. Today we'll be going over ways to present yourself to landlords to make a great first impression and ways to answer difficult questions about previous financial struggles and poor rental history. The topics that will be covered in this video include ways to present yourself to landlords, rental portfolios, addressing challenging topics like evictions, a poor credit history, and a lack of rental history. When searching for housing, the first thing you should typically do when you see a housing post that interests you is to call the property owner to express your interest and see if the housing opportunity is still available. When calling the property owner to inquire about the housing opportunity, make sure to sound cheerful and professional when speaking. Don't be rude. Remember that this is their first impression of you, so be respectful when speaking to the property owner. Make sure you have questions prepared as well that you want to ask ahead of time. That way, you remember to ask them during your conversation. Also, make sure to have a pen and paper handy just in case you need to take notes. Also, be prepared to answer questions regarding your income and credit report. They might not ask, but just be prepared just in case they do. Finally, if you remain interested in the housing opportunity, schedule a time to see the property and speak to the property owner in person. If the property manager does not answer your initial phone call, make sure to leave them a voicemail. Make sure that you speak clearly and you speak slow enough for the contact manager to understand your message and take down your contact information. Be direct and don't ramble on. A short and concise message like the following will be sufficient. Hello, my name is John Doe. I'm calling about the apartment for rent located on 325 Main Street in Napa. I'm extremely interested in the unit and would love the opportunity to see it at your earliest convenience. I can be reached at 707-123-4567. Thank you. When you finally get to meet the property owner in person, make sure you treat it like a job interview. Dress appropriately, but sometimes wearing a worker uniform may help you leave a better impression. For example, if you work in healthcare and wear scrubs, it can demonstrate to the property manager that you have a stable job. Also, use appropriate language when speaking and smile. Make sure to arrive 5 to 10 minutes early to show the property manager that you are punctual and respect their time. Ask questions as well, because it demonstrates interest and helps you assure yourself that this is the perfect housing situation for you. Remember that this is about finding the best housing situation for you, so don't rush this process. Take the time to assess all of your housing options and pick the best one that suits you and your family. If you have children, consider getting a babysitter for them, especially if they misbehave. If you want to stand out more, bring a rental portfolio and be prepared to go over what is in it. I'll go over what a rental portfolio is later in this video. When meeting the property owner for the first time, make sure that you do not arrive late. Do not curse or use slang or share your personal credit and account information. Only provide personal information if you feel that the property owner is seriously considering you as an applicant, and only provide this information on an application. Lastly, be yourself. You want the property owner to see you as a good person and tenant, so do your best to make a good impression. Now, I'll go over what landlords look for in tenants. One thing that they want to see is that you have a stable rental history and that you had good rapport with your previous landlords. Most importantly, landlords want to see that you're able to afford rent payments and expenses, and that you understand the responsibilities of a tenant. Lastly, be honest because landlords can double check with your references. Also, let your references know ahead of time that you put them down so that they're aware that they may be contacted. As mentioned earlier, bring a rental portfolio to stand out. So what is a rental portfolio? A rental portfolio is a packet of information that includes the information that property owners typically want to see from a prospective tenant to make sure that they will be responsible tenants. Having a good rental portfolio demonstrates professionalism and that you value the landlord's time. It also demonstrates that you're prepared and serious about renting a unit. You can also use a rental portfolio to demonstrate any credit difficulties by writing a letter explaining how you're working towards building your credit. So what should you include in your rental portfolio? A good rental portfolio will consist of a completed rental application, a letter introducing yourself and your family, if your family will be living in your unit as well. It will also include a credit report and score if you have recent copies. You can also include pay stubs or bank statements to demonstrate a steady income to prove that you can afford the monthly payments. A 5-year rental history report can also be included to demonstrate that you have rented in the past and made every monthly payment. This will show that you are responsible and reliable. You can also include reference letters from a previous landlord to provide you with more support. If you do not want to carry around a whole packet of personal information, you can also use a rental resume instead, which is a condensed version of the rental portfolio, typically just one page. If you had any financial troubles in the past, a financial history letter can be used to explain your past and current financial situation. This is where you can explain if you have any issues with your credit history. However, do not use this letter to highlight the negatives, but use it to emphasize the positive changes you're making to improve your situation. However, only provide this letter to the landlord if they're going to run a credit check, and provide them with the letter before they check your credit so that you have a chance to explain yourself. If they're not going to check your credit history, then it is best to not bring this letter up at all. When writing a financial history letter, make sure to include an explanation of any negative items on your credit report. For example, explain any late bill payments, evictions, collections, or bankruptcies. Use this letter to demonstrate that you are aware of your financial situation and explain the steps you're taking to improve your credit. For example, mention your plans to pay off bills, new budgeting strategies, or learning to add more to your savings. This letter should demonstrate accountability and explain the steps you have taken or will take to prevent these actions from happening again. Here's an example of a financial history letter, but this one can be much improved. I filed for bankruptcy because I couldn't pay my bills anymore. My credit cards were all maxed out. My ex-wife spent way too much money and never helped me pay bills. Now, as a result, I have an enormous amount of debt. There is no accountability here in this statement. If I was a property owner and read this, I would see this person as someone who would blame me for their missed payments or their violations of their lease. Do not blame others for your problems. Demonstrate accountability and a willingness to learn from your mistakes so someone can see past your mistakes and give you an opportunity to rent on their property and also continue to grow as an individual. So instead of pushing the blame on others, let's try this. I'm writing this letter to explain my current financial situation. You will see negative items on my credit report, including a recent bankruptcy. In the past, I have made some very poor financial decisions. I have recently acknowledged these financial challenges and have taken steps to fix the situation. I have enrolled in debt counseling and budgeting classes. I'm working with an agency to set up payment plans for my past debts, and I have saved over $2,000 over the past year. I'm committed to moving forward responsibly. This letter demonstrates accountability and commitment to improving upon financial struggles. Some topics that can be difficult to address include a lack of or inconsistent rental history, evictions, employment gaps, criminal history, and poor credit. So I'll provide you with some tips on how you can address these questions. Before bringing up any possible evictions to the landlord, make sure that it is actually on your record. Being asked to leave a residence by the property owner is not the same thing as an eviction, which an eviction is a lawsuit filed by the landlord against you due to not vacating a unit within the allotted time. So if you left the unit upon the landlord's request before it went to court, then you should not have an eviction on your record. However, if you were previously evicted and the property owner does not ask about it, do not mention it. Don't bring up your criminal history either, unless you know the landlord is going to do a background check. In this case, it would be a good idea to have a letter that explains their situation in case they do run a background check. Write letters of explanation to acknowledge mistakes and explain circumstances surrounding any criminal history and credit difficulties you may have. These letters are an opportunity for you to explain yourself and the steps you are taking to become a responsible tenant and individual. When writing a letter or talking to a landlord, make sure to choose your words wisely and avoid bad-mouthing your previous landlords. Do not bring up any negative interactions with previous landlords or neighbors. For example, do not bring up any fights, altercations, or drama you had with your landlord or previous neighbors. When listing your rental history, it can sometimes be difficult if you have a lot of time gaps. When filling out an application, there are some tips to cover up any time gaps between employment and rental history. For example, if you have time gaps in your employment or rental history, you can use years on your application instead of months and years. For example, if you're listing your rental history and are listing a place you lived from October 2015 to January 2016, you can just list the dates as 2015 to 2016. This now shows as though you lived in one place for at least a year, if not more. If you lived with family members, list that as well. Put down the address and put down the amount of money that you contributed towards rent, if any. When asked about the reasons that you left a previous residence, do not list any negative situations. For example, do not list that you were evicted, had issues with your landlord, or hated your neighbors. Instead, focus on the positive reasons like how you want to find a better neighborhood for your family, or you need more space. Maybe you're looking for a more affordable rent, or you want to be closer to work or school. Maybe you just want to relocate to another city or area, or find a more long-term living situation. These are all good reasons for looking for a new home. If you want tips and ideas on ways to stand out, watch this funny video on the link provided. As previously mentioned, credit reports and scores are often checked by landlords, but what does a credit report and score consist of? A credit report is a summary of your financial history. Credit reports are used by landlords to determine if you will be a financially responsible tenant. You can request your credit report by visiting annualcreditreport.com. Here you can request a credit report from each of the 3 credit report agencies, which are Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. You can request 1 free credit report from each agency a year, so in total you can get 3 free credit reports, 1 from each agency. Request a report to review your credit before you start your housing search process. This way you can identify any discrepancies, inaccurate information, or credit issues that a landlord might see. You can also include a copy of your credit report in your rental portfolio. You can also get a free unofficial credit score at creditkarma.com, which is a number that indicates your past experience of repaying debts. Landlords want to make sure that they get their money, so they want to make sure that their tenants have a consistent source of income and that they will be able to afford each month's rent. Pay stubs and bank statements can be included in your rental portfolio to demonstrate that you're responsible with your money and that you're not an extravagant spender. Landlords will typically ask for your 2 most recent pay stubs and 2 months of bank statements. There are trends in which landlords will require a certain amount of income to be able to rent a unit. For example, landlords for properties in the Bay Area will expect their prospective tenants to have an income that is 2 times the rent. Remember, the goal is to show that you're financially responsible. Find a place that suits you and is within your budget. Don't stress yourself by committing to a lease that you cannot afford. Reference letters can be included in your rental portfolio, and they can be written by a previous landlord, which is preferred. A case manager, for example a social worker, an employer, or someone that knows you well personally. Just make sure whoever writes you a reference letter that it is from someone who could provide you with a stellar recommendation. So don't ask a landlord who evicted you to write you a letter. Key points that your letter writers should mention include financial stability, reliability, responsibility, and trustworthiness. Ask your letter writers if they can provide examples in your letter on ways you demonstrated these qualities. A rental resume is also an option if you do not want to make a full rental portfolio. A rental resume is pretty much just a summary of your entire rental portfolio. It should include your rental history, employment, and references, along with any information that can strengthen your application. For example, education, credit score, or achievements. You can either choose to present a rental resume to a landlord or a rental portfolio. You do not need both, as long as all the information you need can be found in one of the options. This is an example of what a rental resume can look like. You can research more examples online to help you create one, or simply collect all the documents mentioned earlier to create a portfolio. Thank you for watching, and here are the topics I'll cover in the next video. Take care.